7-year-old Mia pressed her small palm against the dusty oak cabinet in the orphanage office, accidentally triggering a hidden compartment while cleaning as punishment for sneaking cookies after bedtime. Yellowed papers spilled onto the worn linoleum floor, their edges crisp with age and secrets long buried by the Philadelphia Child Services System. Her curious fingers traced over the official-looking document with a strange seal, stopping abruptly at a name written in bold letters beside biological father, Joseph Bernardi, a name she'd heard whispered by staff when they thought no children were listening. The adults always fell silent when she entered the room, their expressions shifting from fear to forced smiles. Mrs. Palmer, the head administrator, had always told Mia that her parents were unknown, casualties of circumstance who couldn't be traced in the system. Yet here was a name, an identity, a piece of her puzzle that the adults had deliberately kept hidden from her small hands and questioning eyes. Tucking the papers carefully into her unicorn backpack, Mia returned to her dormitory room, heart pounding like a trapped bird against her ribs. Under her threadbare blanket with a flashlight, she examined every detail of her discovery, memorizing the address listed beside his name. The Sovereign, Philadelphia's most exclusive restaurant. Tomorrow was her 7th birthday, a day typically marked by a cupcake with a single candle and perhaps a donated stuffed animal from the charity bin. But this year would be different. This year, she had a purpose beyond waiting for someone to choose her from the lineup of hopeful orphans who stood smiling every time potential parents toured the facility. In the communal bathroom, Mia stood on tiptoes to see her reflection, wondering if she had his eyes or smile, searching for evidence of belonging in her own face. She practiced what she would say to the man who had half-created her, then vanished, the courage of childhood innocence burning bright enough to overpower her fear. With birthday money saved from 3 years of small gifts from temporary foster placements, she counted out exactly enough for a bus ride downtown. Her best dress, a hand-me-down blue cotton with only one small tear at the hem, hung ready for morning, paired with the cleanest white socks she could find. The orphanage rules were clear: no leaving grounds without supervision, but the maintenance door near the kitchen had a broken lock that the older kids used for cigarette breaks. Mia had never considered escape before. Where would she go? But now freedom had a destination, a purpose that pulled like gravity. Mrs. Palmer's computer password was taped under her keyboard, Sunshine246, giving Mia access to Google, where she learned that Joseph Bernardi wasn't just any man, but Philadelphia's notorious business mogul, with whispered connections to organized crime. The articles used words she didn't fully understand: racketeering, extortion, alleged kingpin. Sleep evaded her that night as she rehearsed her approach, clutching her birth certificate like a treasure map. Would he recognize something familiar in her face? Would his eyes widen in shock or narrow with dismissal? The unknowns twisted in her stomach like eels, but determination burned brighter. As dawn broke across the orphanage windows, Mia dressed carefully, combing her dark hair with water to tame its wildness, and pinching her cheeks for color like she'd seen in an old movie. The other children still slept, unaware that their quiet companion was about to challenge the city's most dangerous man with nothing but truth as her weapon. Her small hands trembled as she folded the documents into her pocket, smoothing them with reverence. This paper was more than legal jargon. It was the only connection to her origins, proof that she hadn't simply materialized from nothing, that somewhere in this vast city was blood that matched her own. Mrs. Palmer would begin morning check at precisely 7:15. Giving Mia exactly 12 minutes to slip through the maintenance door and disappear into the morning bustle of Philadelphia. Fear and excitement battled in her chest as she tied her scuffed shoes, each breath a countdown to the moment her life would forever split into before and after. Slipping past the night guard who dozed at his desk, earbuds pumping music into his distracted mind, Mia pushed against the heavy metal door leading to freedom. The cool morning air rushed against her face, carrying the promise of answers and the threat of heartbreak in equal measure. The neighborhood awakened around her as she walked briskly toward the bus stop, rehearsing her words one final time. "My name is Mia, and I found your name in my adoption papers." Simple, direct, undeniable, the perfect weapon wielded by a child with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The Sovereign restaurant gleamed like a jewel box, all polished brass and crystal chandeliers that scattered rainbow light across marble floors, where Philadelphia's elite dined on 12-course meals that cost more than Mia's entire yearly allowance. Through plate glass windows, she observed men in tailored suits and women dripping with diamonds. wondering which one might share her blood and bone. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the maitre d' blocked her entrance with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sorry, little one, but we don't serve unaccompanied minors," he said, his gaze already drifting past her to more profitable potential patrons. "I'm not here to eat," Mia replied, voice steady despite her fear. "I'm here to see Mr. Joseph Bernardi on important business about his family," she added, mimicking the authoritative tone Mrs. Palmer used when speaking to difficult social workers. The restaurant fell into expectant silence as Joseph Bernardi's weekly lunch was interrupted by tiny footsteps approaching his corner table, where he sat surrounded by serious men with bulges beneath their jackets. His security detail tensed, hands moving instinctively toward concealed weapons as the small intruder marched toward their boss. "Sir," his bodyguard murmured, "there's a situation." But Joseph raised his hand in a gesture that immediately silenced the table, his eyes narrowing as he studied the determined child who had somehow penetrated his carefully guarded sanctuary. Something in her stance, the set of her jaw, tugged at memories he couldn't quite place. Mia didn't wait for permission to speak, pulling the crumpled papers from her pocket and placing them directly beside his $300 bottle of wine. "My name is Mia," she announced, her voice carrying across the hushed restaurant, "and I found your name in my adoption papers as my biological father." Joseph's face remained impressively neutral as he glanced down at the documents, though the slight tightening around his eyes betrayed his shock to those who knew him well. His companions exchanged wary looks, hands still hovering near weapons, uncertain how to proceed when the threat came in the form of a child claiming blood relation. "Where did you get these?" he asked, voice deliberately gentle despite the storm building behind his eyes, fingers carefully lifting the papers for closer inspection. The restaurant around them hummed with curious whispers as Philadelphia's elite witnessed the unfolding drama at Table 7. Time seemed suspended as Joseph Bernardi stared at his own signature on a document he had never expected to see again, dated 8 years prior during a brief affair with a woman whose name he had deliberately forgotten. The girl's eyes, deep brown with flecks of amber, were unmistakably reflections of his own, genetic echoes that couldn't be denied. "Everyone out," he commanded suddenly, not raising his voice but infusing it with such authority that even strangers dining across the restaurant instinctively gathered their belongings. Within minutes, the sovereign stood empty except for Joseph, his closest guards, and the small girl whose existence had just upended his carefully controlled world. "Sit," he instructed, gesturing to the chair beside him rather than across the table, a subtle but significant choice that didn't escape his watchful security team. "Tell me how you found these papers and how you found me," he continued, signaling for water and a menu for his unexpected guest. Mia climbed onto the plush velvet chair, her feet dangling above the floor as she recounted her discovery with the straightforward honesty unique to children. She spoke without fear or agenda, simply laying truth on the table between them like the precious currency it was in Joseph's shadowy world. "I've been at Harmony House Orphanage since I was a baby," she explained, accepting a glass of water from a nervous waiter. "Nobody ever mentioned you. But I found these papers yesterday when I was being punished for taking extra cookies after bedtime." As Mia spoke, Joseph studied her features with growing recognition. The shape of her nose, the determined set of her jaw, the way her left eyebrow arched slightly higher than her right when asking a question. These were his own traits, reflected back at him through the lens of innocence, undeniable proof sitting before him in a faded blue dress. The day after their meeting, a delivery van stopped outside Harmony House, unloading packages addressed to Mia, clothes from exclusive boutiques, books beyond her reading level but matching interests she'd mentioned, and a handwritten note on heavy cream stationery. The staff exchanged worried glances, recognizing the infamous Bernardi family crest embossed on the packages. "A birthday present from a distant relative," Joseph had written, careful to use language that wouldn't immediately trigger alarms with child services, while including a burner phone pre-programmed with a single contact labeled Dad. The word felt strange on the paper, foreign and threatening, yet somehow right in a way he couldn't articulate. Mrs. Palmer's suspicious gaze followed Mia as she carried her unexpected treasures to the shared dormitory, the administrator already composing emails to her superiors about unexplained gifts appearing for a previously unremarkable orphan. Something significant had changed, and changes in the careful ecosystem of child services rarely boded well. Charlotte Reeves, 27, and already burning out after 5 years as a social worker in Philadelphia's overburdened system, noticed the new clothes immediately during her monthly visit to Harmony House. Designer labels on a 7-year-old orphan raised red flags that her training couldn't ignore despite her crushing caseload of 64 children. "These are very nice things, Mia," she observed casually, noting how the child's fingers instinctively covered the phone hidden beneath her pillow. "Did someone special give them to you recently?" she asked, maintaining a friendly tone while her mind cataloged potential trafficking scenarios they'd warned about in training. Mia had prepared for questions, constructing a story about a charity event where she'd been selected for special gifts, but something in Charlotte's gentle eyes inspired unexpected honesty. "I found my real dad," she whispered, her small voice carrying the weight of a secret too heavy for her young shoulders. The social worker kept her expression neutral despite alarm bells ringing in her head, allowing Mia to continue her story without interruption, while mentally drafting the emergency protocols she would need to implement. Children constructing fantasy family scenarios wasn't unusual, but designer clothes appearing from nowhere certainly was. When Mia produced the documents with Joseph Bernardi's name clearly listed, Charlotte's professional composure nearly cracked, recognition flashing across her face before she could mask it. Every social worker in Philadelphia knew that name, the untouchable businessman whose charitable foundation funded half the city's programs, while rumors of his other enterprises circulated in hushed break-room conversations. "I see," Charlotte said carefully, processing the implications of this revelation while maintaining a reassuring smile for Mia's benefit. "And have you spoken with Mr. Bernardi since finding these papers?" she asked, already planning the sequence of calls she would need to make once safely back in her office. Philadelphia's most dangerous man now had a connection to Charlotte's most vulnerable ward, a combustible combination that threatened to explode beyond the containment of normal protocols and procedures. The system was designed to protect children from ordinary dangers, not from men whose names made seasoned police officers nervous. That evening, as Charlotte researched Joseph Bernardi's background from her small apartment, a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street, its occupants watching her windows with predatory patience. The game had changed, boundaries redrawn, and Charlotte now operated in territory where social work credentials offered no protection against forces that operated beyond legal constraints. The burner phone under Mia's pillow lit up at exactly 8:00 p.m., a text message appearing with a simple question that belied its complexity. "What's your favorite ice cream flavor?" The answer would set in motion a chain of events that would irrevocably alter 3 lives, caught in an unlikely intersection of innocence, power, and duty. Meanwhile, Joseph sat alone in his penthouse office, staring at a photograph hastily retrieved from sealed records by associates paid to ask no questions. The image showed an infant Mia on her birthday, tiny and red-faced, already wearing the determined expression he'd recognized across a crowded restaurant 7 years later. The notorious businessman who controlled Philadelphia's underworld found himself facing the one threat he had never anticipated, not rivals or federal agents, but a small girl with his eyes who had unwittingly broken through every defensive wall with nothing but a birth certificate and unshakable conviction of belonging. Charlotte accessed the secure government database from her cubicle, fingers hovering nervously over keys as she searched Joseph Bernardi's records far beyond what her clearance technically allowed. 15 years of meticulously maintained tax records showed a businessman with legitimate enterprises, spanning real estate, construction, and shipping, the perfect cover for activities whispered about, but never proven. A colleague paused by her desk, eyebrow raised at the high-profile name on Charlotte's screen. "Careful with that one," he warned, voice low and serious. 2 investigators who tried connecting him to anything illegal disappeared last year, files with them. Ignoring the chill crawling up her spine, Charlotte dug deeper, discovering the unexpected detail that Joseph had graduated summa cum laude from Princeton, with a thesis on ethical business practices, a staggering contradiction to his rumored activities. The complexity of the man whose blood ran through Mia's veins grew with each document she uncovered. Public records revealed Joseph's transformation from scholarship student to power broker, following his father's mysterious death 20 years earlier, inheriting a struggling construction company that mysteriously blossomed into a multi-million-dollar empire within 5 years. The timing aligned perfectly with the emergence of a new organized syndicate in Philadelphia's underworld. Charlotte printed only the most essential documents, aware that digital footprints could be traced by those with enough influence to access government servers. Her apartment walls soon displayed a timeline of Joseph's life, connection points highlighted in red string like a detective's investigation board from a crime drama. The birth certificate revealed another key piece, Mia's mother was listed as Natasha Warren, a name that yielded no results in standard databases, as if she'd been systematically erased from public record. Expanding her search parameters, Charlotte discovered an obituary dated 1 month after Mia's birth, cause of death vaguely listed as complications. Late into the night, Charlotte found herself staring at a newspaper photograph from 8 years ago. Joseph at a charity gala standing beside a striking dark-haired woman whose features echoed in Mia's face. The caption identified her simply as guest, another deliberate omission in a pattern of careful information management. A knock at her door at 2:17 a.m. sent adrenaline surging through Charlotte's exhausted body. Through the peephole, she saw a man in an expensive suit holding an envelope, his expression impassive beneath the hallway's flickering light, as he waited with unnerving patience for her to answer. "Miss Reeves," he greeted with professional courtesy, when she finally opened the door a cautious 3 inches. "Mr. Bernardi requests a meeting regarding your mutual interest in a certain child's welfare." The envelope contained a business card with tomorrow's date, an address, and a time, 10 a.m. at the Sovereign. Sleep eluded Charlotte as she weighed professional obligations against personal safety, the system's rigid protocols against a child's best interests. By dawn, she had formulated a plan that balanced all competing factors, dressing in her most professional outfit, armor against the intimidation she anticipated at the meeting. The Sovereign looked different in daylight, less intimidating without evening shadows masking its imperfections, yet Charlotte's heart still raced as she gave her name to the maitre d', who immediately escorted her to a private dining room. Joseph Bernardi stood as she entered, the gesture unexpectedly old-world and courteous from a man with his reputation. "Thank you for coming, Miss Reeves," he began, gesturing to the chair across from him at a table set with morning tea and pastries that remained untouched between them. "I understand we need to discuss Mia's situation with complete transparency." Charlotte maintained steady eye contact, years of facing down hostile parents and bureaucrats having prepared her for this moment. "Mr. Bernardi, I'll be direct. Your name appearing in Mia's life raises significant concerns given your reputation in this city." Joseph's laugh surprised her, genuine and without malice, the sound incongruous with everything she'd read about him. "My reputation varies greatly depending on who you ask," he replied, pouring tea for them both with practiced grace that spoke of genuine breeding rather than acquired mannerisms. "Let me be equally direct. I had no knowledge of Mia's existence until she appeared at my table 3 days ago, but DNA doesn't lie, and those are my eyes looking back at me from her face. I intend to provide for her future while respecting the legal frameworks you're obligated to enforce." The park bench offered neutral territory for their first official meeting, Charlotte sitting slightly apart, as Joseph awkwardly presented Mia with an elaborate dollhouse that the child examined with critical precision. "It's very pretty," Mia said finally, "but I've never actually had a room of my own to put it in." Her innocent observation hit Joseph with unexpected force, a reality check delivered without guile that penetrated deeper than any business negotiation or threat he'd ever encountered. The man who controlled half of Philadelphia's economy found himself speechless before a 7-year-old's unvarnished truth. "Perhaps we could get ice cream instead," he suggested, glancing at Charlotte for permission, his usual commanding presence replaced by an almost comical uncertainty. The social worker nodded, observing this unexpected vulnerability with professional interest that was quickly becoming personal curiosity. Watching Joseph carefully cut Mia's sundae into manageable bites while answering her rapid-fire questions about his childhood pets revealed dimensions to the man that no background check could uncover. His patient explanations about why giraffes have long necks betrayed an intelligence that could have flourished legitimately under different circumstances. "Do you have other kids?" Mia asked between bites of chocolate ice cream, the directness of childhood cutting through social niceties to the heart of what she really wanted to know. "Am I your only one? Or do I have brothers and sisters somewhere?" Joseph's expression shifted subtly, pain flickering across features trained to reveal nothing in high-stakes negotiations. "You're my only child," he answered softly, adding with unexpected honesty, "I never thought I'd be anyone's father." Charlotte found herself smiling, despite her professional reservations, as Mia proceeded to explain, with solemn authority, everything Joseph needed to know about proper fatherhood, based on books she'd read and movies she'd seen during orphanage movie nights. His rapt attention to this lecture seemed genuinely respectful, rather than patronizing. Their weekly meetings expanded from park benches to museum visits, where Joseph displayed surprising knowledge of Renaissance art that captivated both Mia and Charlotte. The social worker found herself taking mental notes not just for her case files, but for personal interest, as the notorious businessman revealed himself as unexpectedly cultured and thoughtful. My father insisted I study classical education, alongside more practical matters, Joseph explained, when Charlotte commented on his detailed knowledge of 16th century sculpture techniques. The brief shadow crossing his face at the mention of his father revealed complexities Charlotte found herself increasingly curious to understand. Mia flourished under the attention, her school performance improving dramatically, while her nightmares about abandonment gradually subsided, according to reports from Harmony House staff. The transformation was measurable in data Charlotte carefully documented, building a case file that increasingly supported continued contact. "He's teaching me chess," Mia announced during her monthly assessment, proudly demonstrating a complex opening move with confidence that had been absent 3 months earlier. "He says it helps with strategic thinking, which means planning many steps ahead instead of just what's happening now." The court-mandated psychological evaluation confirmed what Charlotte already suspected. Mia's emotional well-being was significantly improved by the structured relationship with her biological father. The therapist's report noted decreased anxiety, improved peer relationships, and healthier attachment patterns developing. Charlotte's supervisor raised skeptical eyebrows at the glowing reports, pen tapping against the desk calendar during their review meeting. "You understand who this man is, Reeves? What he's allegedly involved with? The department can't afford any scandal if this blows up." "I understand the concerns," Charlotte replied carefully. "But I also understand that a child who previously had no one now has someone willing to move mountains for her welfare. The data supports continued supervised visitation with appropriate safeguards in place." The court ultimately agreed, granting Joseph limited visitation rights under Charlotte's supervision, a ruling that triggered whispers throughout Philadelphia's legal community. Judge Anderson's statement acknowledged the unorthodox nature, while prioritizing the child's demonstrable improvement, setting precedent that would be examined in law schools for years to come. Charlotte noticed it first during their 7th supervised visit, the way Joseph's gaze lingered on her when Mia was distracted by ducks in the park pond, something warm and appreciative replacing his usual guarded expression. The realization sent an unprofessional flutter through her chest that she immediately attempted to suppress. Professional boundaries existed for good reasons, particularly with someone whose file contained suspected connections to activities that had funded the very criminal organizations Charlotte fought against through her work. The irony wasn't lost on her, as she caught herself admiring his hands while he helped Mia feed the ducks. "You're different than I expected," Joseph remarked, as they watched Mia run ahead on the path, maintaining careful distance while allowing the illusion of independence that 7-year-olds crave. "Most people in your position would have blocked any contact, taken the safe bureaucratic route." The compliment warmed her despite professional caution, his genuine respect for her judgment, more flattering than the expensive thank you gifts she'd already declined twice. "Most people in your position wouldn't submit to background checks and court supervision just to spend time with a child they never knew existed." Autumn leaves crunched beneath their feet as an unexpected, comfortable silence fell between them, the afternoon sun casting golden light across the park that transformed ordinary scenes into something from an impressionist painting. Charlotte found herself relaxing into the moment, her usual hypervigilance temporarily suspended. "Would you consider having dinner with me sometime?" Joseph asked suddenly, his usual confident demeanor replaced by an almost boyish uncertainty. "Not here. Not as Mia's father and caseworker, but just as Joseph and Charlotte." The question hung between them, laden with complications neither could fully articulate. Professional ethics, personal safety, the weight of his reputation, and her responsibility. Charlotte's hesitation wasn't rejection, but careful consideration of a decision that could alter multiple lives, including her own. "I can't," she finally answered, voice gentler than intended, betraying feelings at odds with her words. The ethical implications alone would compromise Mia's case, not to mention department regulations about personal involvement with clients' families. Joseph nodded with unexpected grace, acceptance rather than challenge in his response. "I understand and respect your position," he said simply. No manipulation or pressure following her refusal. Another surprise from a man rumored to take whatever he wanted regardless of obstacles. That night, Charlotte dreamed of parallel lives, one where Joseph was simply a successful businessman with no shadows in his past, one where she wasn't bound by professional ethics that prevented personal connections with clients' families. The fantasy was more disturbing than comforting when morning light brought reality back into focus. Her colleague Pauline noticed the change in Charlotte's demeanor during their shared lunch break, raising an eyebrow over her salad as Charlotte checked her phone for the third time. Either you've got a new man, or the Bernardi case is getting more complicated than you've admitted. It's nothing, Charlotte insisted too quickly, the heat rising to her cheeks betraying her words. Just making sure I don't miss any messages about tomorrow's visitation schedule changes. The truth hovered unspoken between professional obligations and personal desires, that Charlotte found herself looking forward to these supervised visits beyond professional interest, that Joseph's insightful observations about art and literature had become highlights in otherwise monotonous weeks. When her apartment was broken into that Friday night, nothing taken but files clearly searched, Charlotte's first thought wasn't to call police but to call Joseph, a realization that terrified her more than the violation of her home. The lines between professional judgment and personal feelings had blurred dangerously without her permission. Joseph arrived within 20 minutes of her call despite living across town, his presence commanding as he spoke quietly to the responding officers who suddenly became much more attentive to the case. His protective stance beside Charlotte felt simultaneously comforting and alarming, evidence of power that operated outside normal channels. The unspoken tension between them crystallized as he drove her to a hotel for the night, security personnel discreetly appearing at strategic positions throughout the building without any visible instructions from Joseph. The infrastructure of protection snapped into place with practiced efficiency that highlighted the dual nature of the man. The morning headline sent shockwaves through Joseph's carefully constructed world. Crime boss's secret daughter discovered, splashed across the Philadelphia Inquirer's front page. His phone erupted with calls from associates, lawyers, and rivals, sensing weakness in his previously impenetrable reputation. "Get Mia and her caseworker secure immediately," he ordered his most trusted lieutenant, voice deadly calm despite the hurricane of consequences already forming. "Use the contingency protocols, full protection detail, no digital communication until I personally clear it." Charlotte's supervisor placed her on administrative leave pending investigation into her questionable judgment regarding the Bernardi case. Professional disgrace paled compared to her fear for Mia's safety, now that the connection had been publicly exposed. The orphanage transformed overnight, security personnel in suits replacing friendly volunteers, as Joseph's invisible influence extended protective boundaries around his daughter. Mrs. Palmer watched with wide, frightened eyes, as cameras were discreetly installed at all entrances. Across town, Anthony Pacini, Joseph's longtime rival for control of Philadelphia's port operations, studied the newspaper with calculating interest. "Find everything on the girl and the social worker," he instructed his intelligence team. "Leverage points, weaknesses, anything we can use." Charlotte's phone rang precisely once, a burner number displaying on her screen that connected her to Joseph's secure communication network. "Meet our mutual friend at the Liberty Bell entrance in 30 minutes, a voice instructed before disconnecting, the coded message immediately clear. The black SUV waited exactly where promised, windows tinted beyond legal limits, driver anonymous behind dark sunglasses despite the overcast day. "He's waiting for you both at the safe house," the man explained, handing Charlotte a sealed envelope containing new identification documents. Mia sat silently in the back seat, uncharacteristically subdued as city blocks blurred past the windows, her small hand clutching the stuffed penguin Joseph had given her. "Are the bad people trying to hurt my dad?" she finally asked, child's intuition cutting straight to the heart of their situation. The safe house defied Charlotte's expectations. Not an anonymous apartment, but a charming farmhouse an hour outside Philadelphia. Motion sensors disguised as garden ornaments dotted the landscape, while cameras masqueraded as birdhouses among ancient oak trees. Joseph waited on the porch, expression grim as he scanned the horizon before allowing his attention to focus on their arrival. "I'm sorry to have disrupted your lives," he said simply, the weight of responsibility evident in the new lines around his eyes that hadn't been there days earlier. Inside, maps and surveillance photographs covered dining room walls while communications equipment blinked silently from what had once been a breakfast nook. "Pacini's people have been watching the orphanage for 3 days, Joseph explained, pointing to time-stamped images of suspicious vehicles. "What happens now?" Charlotte asked, professional training temporarily overridden by the immediate reality of their situation. The ethical boundaries of her career seemed suddenly meaningless against the tangible threat surrounding them, regulations and protocols useless paper shields. Joseph's answer was interrupted by his phone's distinctive tone, his expression darkening as he read the incoming message. "Pacini's making his play sooner than expected," he said, voice tight with controlled fury. He's petitioned the court for emergency removal of Mia from both the orphanage and my visitation. An unmarked sedan pulled into the driveway, delivering a distinguished silver-haired man carrying a briefcase, who Charlotte recognized immediately as William Hayes, former district attorney. His presence confirmed the gravity of their situation more than any threat assessment or security protocol could have. We have approximately 48 hours before Pacini's legal maneuvers force a court response, Hayes explained after introductions, spreading documents across the kitchen table. Once that happens, the system will follow protocols that will ultimately expose Mia to significantly greater danger. Charlotte paced the farmhouse living room, legal and ethical frameworks colliding in her mind as she processed the impossible choice before her. You're asking me to help you betray your entire organization, testify against people who would kill you without hesitation, and enter witness protection? Insurance policies serve multiple purposes, Joseph replied, sliding a leather portfolio across the table, its contents meticulously organized with the precision of a man who had spent decades preparing for potential betrayal. These records document every transaction, every connection, every player in Philadelphia's underground economy. Hayes examined the documents with professional assessment, occasionally nodding as particularly damning evidence emerged from the carefully preserved records. This would dismantle 3 major criminal networks across the eastern seaboard, including significant portions of your own operations, Mr. Bernardi. Morning light filtered through farmhouse curtains, illuminating Mia as she slept on the sofa, exhausted from fear and confusion that no 7-year-old should ever experience. Her vulnerability crystallized the situation for Charlotte with painful clarity. Professional ethics meant nothing if they failed to protect those most in need. The FBI has a specialized unit for high-value informants, Hayes continued, voice deliberately neutral, despite the extraordinary nature of their discussion. They can establish new identities, relocate you to literally anywhere in the country, create background histories that will withstand any scrutiny. Charlotte struggled with the implications, her career dedicated to working within systems that now seemed incapable of protecting a child caught in extraordinary circumstances. You'd abandon everything you've built, all your power and influence, just to keep her safe and in your life? Joseph's gaze never left his sleeping daughter, something profound shifting behind his eyes that transformed his entire demeanor, from powerful crime boss to something more fundamental. None of it matters compared to her, he said simply. The FBI agent arrived at dusk, helicopter landing in the adjacent field, rather than risking ground transportation that could be tracked or intercepted. Agent Prescott entered without ceremony, her no-nonsense demeanor cutting through tension as she assessed the room's occupants with practiced efficiency. Mr. Bernardi's offer is unprecedented in scope, she stated after reviewing the evidence Hayes had prepared. The Justice Department is prepared to offer full immunity and comprehensive witness protection in exchange for testimony and evidence leading to the dismantling of the Pacini network. Charlotte recognized the deliberate omission. Joseph's own organization would inevitably collapse as collateral damage from his testimony, a sacrifice understood but strategically unmentioned in official negotiations. The calculation in his eyes confirmed he recognized this unstated reality. The transition must happen immediately, Prescott continued, unfolding maps and documents across the farmhouse table. Once Pacini realizes what's happening, every asset he controls will be deployed to prevent Mr. Bernardi from testifying, including corrupt officials within multiple agencies. Joseph nodded without hesitation. Decades of built power surrendered in a single gesture. I need 30 minutes to set final protocols in motion, after which my lieutenant will implement contingency plans to protect our remaining legitimate operations and employees. What happens to Mia during this transition? Charlotte asked, professional concern overriding personal confusion about her own role in this extraordinary situation. The system isn't designed for circumstances like these, and her legal status remains under Child Services jurisdiction. Agent Prescott turned to Charlotte with unexpected directness. That's where you come in, Ms. Reeves. We need someone with legal authority over the child who understands the situation and can maintain continuity of care during transition to witness protection. Someone Mia trusts. The implication hung unspoken between them. Charlotte would need to abandon her career, her identity, her entire life built in Philadelphia to accompany them into witness protection. You have 30 minutes to decide, Prescott stated without pressure or judgment, simply acknowledging the reality of their timeline. 3 months later, Charlotte stepped onto the porch of a modest suburban home in a Midwestern town whose name she was still learning to pronounce correctly. The neighborhood around her bustled with ordinary activity. School buses, commuters, joggers with dogs, a normality that sometimes felt surreal. Joseph, now known as Paul Weber, widowed financial consultant, emerged from the front door to join her, their morning ritual of shared silence before Mia awoke, becoming increasingly comfortable. The man who once commanded an empire now found satisfaction in making pancakes shaped like animals for his daughter's breakfast. The school called yesterday, Charlotte mentioned, still adjusting to her new identity as Laura Weber, Paul's sister-in-law who had moved in to help raise her niece following her sister's tragic passing. Mia's teacher wants to recommend her for the gifted program based on her test scores. The transformation in their lives extended beyond new names and locations. Joseph attended weekly therapy sessions to process his transition from power to ordinary citizenship, while Charlotte adapted her social work training to a new position at the local Family Services Center. Pescini's arrest had dominated national headlines for weeks, the systematic dismantling of his network, revealing corruption extending into law enforcement, judiciary, and local government throughout the eastern seaboard. Joseph's testimony, delivered remotely with identity concealed, had provided the final evidence needed to secure convictions. Mia thrived in her new environment. Initial confusion about their sudden relocation transformed into excitement about new opportunities and experiences. Her natural resilience allowed adaptation that the adults sometimes struggled to match, her acceptance of their unusual family configuration unburdened. "The neighbor invited us to their barbecue this weekend," Joseph mentioned, the ordinary nature of the invitation still novel to a man accustomed to elaborate security protocols surrounding any social engagement. "The kids from Mia's class will be there, and apparently their potato salad is legendary." Charlotte smiled at his deadpan delivery. The subtle humor that had emerged as Paul developed distinct from Joseph's necessarily guarded personality. The man who had ordered executions now worried about proper etiquette for neighborhood gatherings and whether homemade contributions would be appropriate. "I've been thinking about something," Charlotte said carefully, the weight of her consideration evident in her tone. "The counselor mentioned that Mia's been drawing pictures of all three of us together as a family at art therapy, but she started asking questions about why we have different last names." Joseph's expression shifted with understanding, the implication clear without further elaboration. Their unusual arrangement had evolved beyond its original parameters of necessity and duty, becoming something neither had anticipated when they'd fled Philadelphia under federal protection. "I've been considering the same questions," he admitted, the vulnerability in his admission striking from a man who had once calculated risk with cold precision. "Not just for Mia's sake, though her stability remains my primary concern, but because these months have shown me possibilities I never believed existed." Their conversation paused as Mia burst through the front door in pajamas decorated with dinosaurs, her hair wild from sleep, as she announced immediate breakfast requirements with the authority of childhood. The discussion would continue later, but its significance hung between them with promise rather than threat. In the kitchen, Joseph expertly flipped pancakes while Mia set the table with mismatched plates, their domestic routine a stark contrast to the danger that had forged their connection. Charlotte watched them, this improbable family created from crisis and choice rather than convention. As autumn leaves drifted past the windows of their modest home, the former crime boss taught his daughter to calculate the proper ratio of maple syrup to pancake, while the former social worker prepared for another day at the Family Services Center, where her experience helped other children find stability amid chaos. The photograph on their mantle showed the three of them at Mia's school carnival, ordinary smiles in an ordinary moment that belied the extraordinary journey that had brought them together. Their story, of an orphan girl who found her father through courage and chance, of unlikely connections forged in crisis, continued to unfold. Thank you all for following this incredible journey from Philadelphia's underworld to this heartwarming new beginning. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you enjoyed watching how Mia's courage changed 3 lives forever, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who appreciates stories of redemption and unconventional families finding their way. Your support helps me bring more powerful stories just like this one.
Сейчас зайдем, посмотрим, как у меня трансляция началась. если вот рассматривать, я говорю, задумываясь о том, что прожитые типа 30 лет, так смотришь на многих людей, которые сейчас, соответственно, живут, которым в районе 30, которые уже потеряли вообще вкус к жизни, да, радость какую-то от жизни. Таких, причем, кстати, становится все больше и больше. Мне кажется, этот средний возраст, когда говорили, что начинается вот этот кризис среднего возраста, он тоже сместился, как и говорят, что сейчас люди, в принципе, ну, быстрее взрослеют, быстрее приходят, ну, как-то осмысливают все, да, ну, почему-то это всегда все в плохом больше ключе на самом деле, да, вот что сейчас дети, например, быстрее взрослеют, вот, и мне кажется, кризис вот этот среднего возраста, он, наверное, тоже сместился. И вот я думаю, что он сместился где-то в районе 30 лет. Опять-таки, это тоже не со всеми, наверное, связано. Не у всех людей так, все люди разные. И как-то приходишь к той мысли о том, что помимо того, что люди сами по себе стали такие вот, наверное, депрессивные, да, времена такие сложные, да, вот это вот еще извне много каких вещей случается, ну, на данный момент, которые людям усугубляют эту ситуацию на самом деле, вот этой депрессии, вот этих кризисов, да, каких-то переходных моментов в жизни. И непонятно, если конец этому всему, да, наступает людей потом белая полоса в жизни, или они не могут выбраться из нее. Примеров достаточно на самом деле много. Например, вот сосед у меня есть такой хороший парень был. И есть, он хороший человек сам по себе. Но вот у него сейчас очень сложные времена такие, как бы дизмораль на него напала. О том, что он не реализовался в своей жизни к 30 годам, что жизнь у него кончена. И не может он выбраться из этой ситуации, да, как бы, как говорят, если мы говорим, что это мужики такие, да, типа слабые, да, какие-то, ну, безморальные, ну, как бы такие вот, что в основном это случается, наверное, зачастую, может быть, это у мужиков случается в этом возрасте. Такой кризис, наверное, да? Каких-то неудач в своей жизни, не пришедших ни к чему достойному и хорошему. Но вопрос в том, что это мужики такие, типа слабые, или времена такие стали, что если вот разобраться так, вот, например, возьмем даже с древних времен, когда человеку нужно было добывать пищу самому, да, там убивать мамонтов, мужику стоило там сходить на охоту. Да, на охоту он сходил, кого-то там добыл добычу, принес домой, да, что-то где-то там поделал дома, и все как бы. Ну и это, возможно, как работа тоже на ежедневной основе, да, была. И как бы мужик в то время считался, ну, еще воином были, они воинами были, не воевали, да. В любом случае, это все такая в основном физическая была работа, типа стратегии именно добычи пищи какой-то себе. Ну, тут вот требовалось, возможно, какое-то знание, да, тут я не спорю. Но в основном это была физическая работа. Если взять, к примеру, не такие далекие времена, когда там люди вот только выходили из пещер, да, взять даже, допустим, 50 лет назад, 100 лет назад, да, когда люди работали на заводах, и что тогда считалось именно мужиком, да, таким. Разница была, наверное, нынешними временами в том, что если ты работал, к примеру, на заводе на каком-то, то тебе было этого всего достаточно. То есть ты уходил на завод, отработал свое время, да, пришел домой, какие-то тоже там, может, домашние дела, и, ну, и этого тебе было достаточно на самом деле. Как бы и все, и заключалась вся суть именно мужчин, ну вот, как бы устроиться главное на завод и работать физически, опять-таки, да, получить какое-то образование, так, ну, как бы среднеспециальное, к примеру, да, какой-нибудь токарь, идти на завод, отработать там 8-12 часов. Ну, это не легкая работа, я не спорю тоже с этим. Но опять-таки, этого зато было достаточно. Человек уходил, он отрабатывал там 12 часов и понимал, что ему будет всего достаточно. Ради этого и была, наверное, главная и основная мотивация. Да? И если перенесемся мы, наверное, в наше время уже, сейчас, на данный момент, то есть люди просто не знают на самом деле, как заработать. Как получить жилье, как получить новый автомобиль. То есть способов получения данного результата его нету как такового. Это говоря о том, что ты будешь ходить на работу по 8, по 12 часов, допустим, сутками там работать, да, ты не заработаешь на машину, заработаешь ты на нее через 5 лет, если ты там не будешь ни пить, ни есть, как бы, да. Ну ладно, если вообще не тратить деньги, то заработаешь год. Ну такого же невозможно, это же только где-то в сказках. С учетом нынешних трат, то есть даже при зарплате какой-то средней, там 100 тысяч рублей, ну где-то 60, где-то 70, где-то 80. Возьмем от 60, наверное, до 120. То есть, к примеру, достижение результата такой, как, к примеру, квартира, недвижка какая-то своя, это кредиты, ипотеки. То есть вот здесь и сейчас ты берешь. И залазя все глубже и глубже, то есть, как сказать, взял ты, к примеру, себе недвижимость, да, в ипотеку, пусть она будет так. Помимо тех трат, к примеру, помимо этой ипотеки, там ремонт и так далее, тебе за эти 20 лет нужно и телефоны менять, и одежду менять, и так далее, там кушать надо. Машины также в этот же момент менять тебе надо. И то есть это кабала на самом деле такая, она дизморальная. И к чему это все? Что же значит мужик в наше время, который ходит на завод, работает 12 часов, а денег у него все равно нету. Как бы добычу он принести уже не может, да? Ну типа он может сходить в лес, но от этого толку особо не будет. И, наверное, сам интернет, во-первых, расфорсил вот это вот все, то, что люди должны зарабатывать какие-то миллионы. Они должны зарабатывать. Это было бы шикарно, если бы каждый зарабатывал. Но каждый по своей сути не может столько зарабатывать, да, потому что не хватит денег, чтобы каждый. А может их и хватит, но никто никому не даст так зарабатывать. И вот возвращаясь, к примеру, к тому, что какая зарплата? 1300, наверное, должна быть в наше время, чтобы как бы себя, наверное, обеспечивать, да, хорошо, одному. И кто же тогда мужик в наше время? Типа, что он должен делать? Что он должен выполнять? Как бы, если он ходит на работу, но смысла от этого нету. Ну, как бы он есть, да, у тебя какой-то идет доход, но если его недостаточно. Смотришь другие профессии, другую работу, да,